This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Welcome to the G-Spot Podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us for conversations around sex, spirit, and all things self-care. All things self-care. All things self-care.
This is a journey into sound.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro.
You are a G-Spot Podcast with Katie Silcox.
Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We've made it. We have entered into this new place that is 2021. And although one could argue that nothing has changed, right? That everyone is getting so excited about 2020 being over. But I would argue that that's maybe not correct. And the reason is that the entirety of the globe's people is saying that we are entering a new year. And the force of that agreement, that collective agreement, has Shakti, has a power. But as we speak about every year, I want to remind all of us that there is a part of you that does not need a New Year's resolution. And I love New Year's resolutions. And I'm going to share some of mine with you today. You know, I used to call myself the queen of resolutions, the grand dame, if you will, of self-help and improvement. And that's great. And I think so many of you guys are like that. You know, we come to yoga, we come to meditation, we come to spirituality because we have come to this lifetime with a sense of intention and purpose that we want to fulfill. And that's amazing. I have a huge library of books that, really all point in a very similar direction, and that is being and becoming. And, as we enter into 2021, it's really beneficial to remember these New Year's resolutions. But at the end of the day, if we forget that most important part, that there's a part of us that is already whole, that's already healed, that's already perfect, that is the divine itself, that is the angels that you've been calling for, that it lives within you, that one could call the divine, one could call God, one could call source. And that God is a God of love. And that God is a God of eternal presence. And for me, God is the miracle moment when I realize that in this present moment, I am already loved. I am already worthy. I am a child of the Creator. And in that, I taste some peace. Because here's the deal. Unless we connect with that part of ourselves, all these exciting New Year's resolutions and all of these intentions for 2020 to be different will be futile. All these plans at self-improving are just another mask that we wear. Eventually, when we fail, because we will feel like we are bad and fucked up and unlovable, and then we start that cycle again of punishment, restriction, the new diet, right? This year I'm going to complete X, Y, and Z. But what if we started from a different place? What if we started from this place of receptivity? What if we started from this place of feeling that we're already inherently good, worthy of love, right here, right now, with our messy hair, crazy relationships, messed up finances, some of us sick in bed, some of us with a messy ass house, right? That we're already okay. And then let's do some really cool shit with this lifetime. So in 2021, I want to share some of my my intentions and goals. I know I mentioned in another podcast this incredible documentary called The Social Dilemma. One of my goals is to spend less time on social media and reading the news, because what that really revealed to me is that social media and the news are really designed to sell you shit. Now, what is so compelling to understand is that when we are in an emotional place, it is a lot easier to convince us to do things, to buy things, right? To be in a certain way or think in a certain way. And so one of my challenges to you is to really ask the question, how can I use the internet? How can I use social media to bring forth my intentions in 2021 instead of using it to distract and derail me from it? Another one of my goals is to spend even more time in nature and in what the yogis called saucha, which means silence. I heard the other day a phrase that said, practice being quiet more than you talk. And a lot of times that talking is going inside our head. Another great phrase is that we could contemplate in 2021 is to be interested more than you are interesting. You know, if there was one message I could send out to collective humanity, it's to be interested more than you are interesting, to listen more than you think about the next thing you're going to say while someone else is talking. How many of us really fall into that trap? And we're actually giving you guys a free workshop January 2nd. You should join us if you're hearing this in time. That's all about the spiritual practice of receptivity and what that means, and how to really receive things, receive people, receive the sensory world while staying inside yourself, really being in that receptive mode. Another one of my goals is to really use my time well and to really think about how much time I have left. As you begin to enter into mid-age, some of you are young, some of you are beyond mid-age. But as we begin to move into mid-age, it becomes, if we are paying attention and awake, we start to become aware that we don't get this body forever. What are we going to do with this one and sacred life? Another thing that I want to commit more time to is reading books with my hands, not on devices. There's a beautiful Japanese word, sundoku, and it means something of an addiction to buying books that you will never read. And I realized as I looked at my wall of books that I would need to pretty much read every single day just to get through all of my books, and maybe some of you can relate. But what's so beautiful about reading books is that studies have shown that after a few minutes of reading, all the markers in the nervous system start to, that trend towards activation start to release, and we enter into a relaxed state through reading books. And they found that the internet absolutely did the opposite, that it activates us. Another one of my goals, and I know, we're all sort of hopeful that this vaccine will enable life to, never will it get back to normal, but get back to something of an experience where we can be together again. And one of my goals is to connect with people outside of my normal socio-demographic group, and especially outside of my racial group, and to be really intentional about that. And while we don't want to be performative or weird, I think it's super important for all of us to reach outside of those normal racial and socio-demographic groups. And it's, first and foremost, it's not your fault that you're conglomerated into your own socioeconomic and racial group. It is such a feature of our society to really do that to us. And so I want to highly recommend a really great book. We'll put the link for you guys. in the show notes, but it's a book I've been reading lately, and it's called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? It's an amazing book. And what I love about it is it's super in depth, and it really goes into the nuances, not only of racial inequality, but and white privilege, and but the socio structures that create that. But it does it in such a compassionate way. And I really loved that book, and that book really encouraged me to step outside of those normal socio-demographic groups. 2021, I'd love to have more humor and to really start to let people off the hook in 2021. That's just a great question we can ask. Like, who am I, as I sit to meditate, who have I got on the hook? Who can I release off of that hook? While at the same time, really cultivating wonderful and good boundaries with people, avoiding negativity, avoiding toxic, I don't want to say toxic people, but toxic energies. Marie and I were talking this morning about something she called boundary grief. And I was like, oh, I totally get that. Boundary grief and also boundary guilt. And what we can be sure of is that when we create good boundaries, those that we create boundaries with might attack us, might be upset about those boundaries. And even if they're not, there can be a certain level of emotions and grief that arises as you begin to do things in a different way, right? There's a reason we don't create boundaries, you guys. We don't create boundaries because our nervous system finds it a lot easier to go with the nervous system patterning that we've had since childhood, right? And so healthy, good boundaries may or may not what we grew up with. And so our nervous system is primed to not have those good boundaries. Another thing that I want to create a lot of is room in my calendar. Just what would it look like to actually book on the calendar space 3 days in a row where you do not have anything planned with anyone? And when we do that, we're able to enter into deep flow spaces that allow an incredible generative energy, restful energy to come forth. And you may find you want to be doing something totally different with your life. If you never get out of the routine, and there's nothing wrong with good routine, but if you never get out of that routine, and especially a packed social calendar, you can never get off the momentum of your life in order to create, right? And we want to create new things in our life. Another goal of mine is to be more in tangible reality and less in virtual reality. If we are all living online, and I know so many of us have gotten deeply into that in 2020 because of the pandemic, but if we're only living in virtual reality, it is so easy for events to take on gargantuan proportions. I think about the laborers that I know in my life. My brother is a contractor, my mom's a designer, and these people work with their hands in the material world all day long. The people who are fixing your car, the people who are painting the walls of your house, the garbage man, people who work with material reality have a much better grip on what's going on in our world today than people who live in a cubicle or who spend all of their days on Zoom, right? That brings in this complete disidentification with natural reality and with what's actually going on in the sensory realm. And so our body has way more heightened sensitivity to the energies of fight and flight and freeze. When you live on Zoom and when you live on the internet, you actually don't have a grasp on reality. Even if you think you do because you're checking CNN every other 15 minutes, what it's actually doing is taking you into a virtual reality that someone else is very much invested in you being in. And so what would it look like to spend more time in the actual reality of your life? interestingly enough, you can probably have more of an effect politically by acting locally. So just an idea, you guys. Another big thing that I've found for me that's been super helpful that I want to continue with in 2021 is getting through the hardest problems in my day first thing in the morning. So for me, the hardest thing in my life right now is finishing my second book, which I have great news. It is getting there. It is in the editing phase and it is almost finished, which is amazing. But working on my book is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like, this second book is a beast. It is an incredibly personal, vulnerable, raw, visceral story about my experience in my life. And oh my God, Healthy, Happy, Sexy, my first book, was like a baby that I popped out in 30 minutes. This second book, which I'm not revealing the title yet because I don't know the title yet. The second book, it's like I've been in labor for 3 days and I'm just about to be you know what, C-section, epidural, whatever you need to do, get this baby out. That's how it feels. And I don't know, I can never say never, but I don't think I'll write a personal memoir again. It's just too damn hard. But yeah, it'll probably be the best book ever because, the hardest things are the ones people usually, and the most raw and vulnerable things are what people love the most. So all that to say, my book's the hardest problem in my life right now. And so I'm going to get through that first thing in the morning. Don't work on the toughest stuff at night. Night is for rest, digest, playing your guitar, singing some songs, watching some Gilmore Girls if you're me, taking a bath, making dinner with your buddies, making dinner with your husband, whatever, right? Laying around, reading a great novel. Get through the hardest stuff as early in the morning as possible. And, really remembering, lastly, what the great Corona Devi of 2020 taught us. What did 2020 teach you? It's been an awful year, horrible year. Right? We've lost too many. And we can only pray that 2021 takes us in a different direction. But we need to remember what it taught us. I feel really grateful for all of you, for you, dear listener of the Key Spot. And I would absolutely love to invite you into joining us this January for Ayurveda School 2021 Level 1. We are anticipating the best year of Ayurveda school yet. And really, there is absolutely no other thing that I would rather be doing than being with you. And you get to be with me a lot in 2021. When you join Ayurveda school, I teach a lot in our course, but we also have some incredible other teachers. It's every Wednesday, 3 hours where we dive into the Dharma, right? We dive into the righteous path. And it's not that we have all the answers, but we start from a place of love and we start from a place of indigenous wisdom, and then we get crazy and fun. So I really hope you can join us. And I'm smiling to myself because I'm remembering that my mom, and I'm going to hold her to this because now it's on the podcast, my mom is actually joining us in 2021. My sister will be there. I will be there. All of Team Shakti will be there. So I hope you can be there. I just really feel like it's going to be a potent year. All right. So I want to end with something really, really beautiful. And it's a quote from none other than Jalal al-Din Rumi. And I hope it inspires you in 2021 as maybe you sit this morning or this afternoon, or maybe you're listening to it at night and you sit in your meditation space and maybe you break out your journal and do some writing and thinking about contemplating these ancient, beautiful, sacred words from the tantric of all tantrics, my beloved Rumi. He says, "There is one thing in this world that you must never forget to do. If you forget to do everything else and not this, there's nothing to worry about. But if you remember everything else and forget this, then you will have done nothing with your life. It's as if a king has sent you to some country to do a task, and you perform 100 other services, but not the one he sent you to do. So, human beings come to this world to do particular work. That work is the purpose, and each is specific to the person. If you don't do it, it's as though a priceless Indian sword were used to slice rotten meat. You say, but look, I'm using the dagger. It's not lying idle. Remember the deep root of your being, the presence of your Lord. Give your life to the one who already owns your breath and your moments. If you don't, you will be wasting valuable keenness and foolishly ignoring your dignity and your purpose. Happy New Year, dear listener.
फूटे फूल